Welcome to Busted Speakers. I'm Alex,
And I'm Ed.
and today we're reviewing Relaxer by Alt J. Now, I don't know that much about Alt J's music other than their first album, An Awesome Wave, which I found to be a very unique way of going about the whole alternative indie rock genre. And it seemed like the band had quite a unique style that's very endearing and appealing to me, and I really like that album.
Very
What do you
enjoyable
think
record.
of Alt? Yeah, what do you think of them in general,
In
though, Ed?
general, well, I've heard all of their records at this point. I was a big fan of An Awesome Wave, and I still am. When it was released, it came to my attention because, weirdly, it won the Mercury Prize, which, for those who don't know,
Really?
is a big sort of British indie music award. And typically, you wouldn't have sort of fresh new bands that had kind of a small cult following win an award on that scale. So I'm not sure exactly what it was that got them that success, but An Awesome Wave was a really good album. It got a lot of criticisms for being sort of like art school garbage, but it was a really solid record, lots of memorable songs. Breeze Blocks is such a good song. I still spin that
Yeah.
regularly now, and they followed that album up with "This Is All Yours," which I understand you've not heard, Alex.
Yeah, I've not heard it, but I don't know. Just to keep up with the whole Alt J thing, I might give it a go because the album in the middle I've not heard.
Well, I'd definitely recommend checking out "This Is All Yours," if only for the context it was released. I mean, I think they fell into a bit of a sophomore slump with that record, like the fan base they
All right.
garnered and the expectations of what that second album would be as opposed to their first record really kind of made the ground crumble beneath their feet, because it's a very
Uh,
directionless album. It's weirdly dense. It feels like a lot of effort was put into it, and occasionally it was a very kinetic album, but nowhere near as frequently as their first record. And also the departure of their lead songwriter and guitarist Gwyl Sainsbury, you can really feel the effects of that exit from that quite essential band member on their second album. And I think this new album,
yeah.
Relaxer, is very much the band sort of picking up the pieces in a way and trying something very different. I mean, Alex, I'm sure compared to An Awesome Wave, you immediately saw the big difference in sound when you first heard Relaxer.
Yeah, this is a world apart almost. But the thing with this is, I've seen a lot of people who just don't like this album, and I can get why, but a lot of it just didn't bother me like too much, as in I wasn't offended by it.
Is
But
that too much of a
it's
that's not really much praise though, really, is it?
no, but what it ends up being is half of it sounds really confusing, like, or the band are really confused, and the other half is just acoustic and like terminally depressive sounding in a way. And
I,
despite the fact there's a lot of nice playing and ideas, I do enjoy quite a bit of this album, but not every song. Certainly not every song, and even the best songs have problems. But on the whole, just going in for overall thoughts, I thought it was okay, but certainly a huge step down from An Awesome Wave, and I'm guessing This Is All Yours will make the like Fall from Grace a bit more clearer, I guess.
Yeah, the thing is, I wasn't a big fan of "This Is All Yours," as has been established. But
Yeah.
to be completely honest, I'm sad to say that Relaxer, to me at least, comes off as the sort of thing that pretentious art school students would enjoy, because it just purely because it sounds different. Which is something that,
Right.
as I mentioned before, I think Alt J were really unfairly criticised for when they came out with An Awesome Wave and garnered so much attention from that Mercury Prize win.
Mhm.
But the sophomore slump I mentioned at least resulted in some nice experimental ideas actually working for the band.
Yeah.
I thought "This Is All Yours" was a decent 5 out of 10 album. Relaxer, on the other
and
hand,
Relaxer is worse than that.
Relaxer is a bad album in my opinion. The best songs on it by
Okay.
far are the singles. The rest of the record is so lacking in content and so misguided and directionless. Like, the things that I criticise This Is All Yours for are so much more apparent on this record. But on the other hand, This Is All Yours felt like a tiny bit of a rehash of an Awesome Wave. Relaxer sounds nothing like their past two albums, and
Yeah,
that
it does not sound anything like the Alt J I'm familiar
that
with.
is something I can absolutely praise the band for here. But as we'll go into the tracks, I'm sure I'll make clear like my dislike for this record, because I really do not like this album. I think it's easily their worst record yet.
Okay, so the first track, Free WW, I guess. I thought this goes in quite strong with a very relaxed and chilled acoustic guitar-led groove. Quite soothing, it's very measured and lush, and deliberate and delicate. And bear in mind, when I was writing these notes, I wasn't aware that the whole album was going to be like this, or a lot of the album would be the same sort of vibe. So I thought this was a nice change of pace. So I can't fault this instrumentally at all. The album is called Relaxer, and I had to bear in mind, I don't know if they were using that title to like have a concept for how the songs should sound, but this song definitely fits the type of relaxer type thing to me. I can't really fault it. I just find it really gorgeous. Although I have to say, you know how when the verses come in, the whole like instrumental kind of stops and they sound quite bare and auto-tuned a little bit. The vocals. Yeah, well, those parts could left a little bit to be desired, and yeah, but I thought that was the best song on here. It's still not great, but yeah, I enjoyed that song.
I completely agree. 3WW is a very solid track, in my opinion. It was the first single that they put out from this record, and when I heard it, my reaction was, yes, they're trying something different, and it's working. Unfortunately, that turned out to be very much to the detriment of this record, in my opinion. I know you like this record a bit more than me, Alex, but regardless, I'm sure you can't deny that there's a bunch of tracks on here that really backfire in the experimentation front. But before we get onto those, I'll just quickly share my thoughts on 3WW. It sort of reminds me of Amnesiac era Radiohead, like to an extent.
Yeah, I kind of got that a little bit.
And Alt J have had some Radiohead comparisons in the past. Their vocalist is kind of like this dingier version of Tom York, who has a very nasally voice. I don't know if it's a vocal effect or if that's just what his vocals sound like, but they really work on here, and as do the female vocals from the Wolf Alice front woman. Can't recall her name.
Cool.
She comes in the second half of the track and really adds some nice textures and layers to this quite minimal but also quite atmospheric instrumental. Really solid opener, honestly. Like, in terms of setting the scene, does its job really well, and this is one of the tracks that I'll take away from the record. And another track is the second track, In Cold Blood. What did you think of that track, Alex?
I was not that much of a fan of it because, yes, this is one of the closer moments to an Awesome Wave. Just the fact there's a bit more of a fast-paced song, a little bit.
There's definitely a more...
vocals sound so confused on here, don't you? I thought.
Yeah, there's definitely more of a solid structure to this, a solid pop structure that does recall an Awesome Wave somewhat, but my main problem with this track is the instrumentation is so grand, which compared to the rest of the record is kind of unusual, but the way it's mixed and mastered really doesn't do the song any favors. I can't say I had many problems with the vocals. I thought the vocals were fine, honestly.
Oh no.
But the songwriting here is pretty cool. I like the 0011 refrain. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I suppose.
And it's just a nice sort of jab in the face after 3WW. Unfortunately, the album immediately loses steam after that for me, and it never really returns to that level of excitement. Even though it's not an utterly thrilling track, it's at least like a nice palate cleanser, even though it's so early on in the record. I would have liked the variety of this album, and this is a very varied album. The songs all stand out for better or worse because they're all quite different from one another. And
Yeah.
I really liked In Cold Blood. I do have my reservations with the mixing and mastering, but it's a good track.
I don't know, this sounds like they were trying to make a Banner track, and it feels very confused, and they sound out of their element on here. And I just felt like the vocals sounded too loose and thrown in with like little finesse. Maybe it's because I enjoyed the first song so much more that the excitement jab in the face vibe of this just didn't work for me. It does get better when we get into the chorus with like the horn parts, but it's still decent, I guess. But it's quite confusing to me, and that's what I felt like a lot of this album was. Like the production is a little too busy for my tastes, but yeah, it's okay.
Speaking of the band trying too hard and lacking finesse, shall we talk about the song Hit Me Like That Snare, which is
oh god,
fucking terrible. Like this track has to be a joke.
Yeah, it has
surely.
To be. I mean,
even you,
know.
as someone who came out thinking this was an okay album, I mean,
I do think that.
You didn't like this song, right? I mean, I
don't like this song.
I've seen nobody defend this track. Even like big Alt J fans are just in unanimous agreement that it is easily the worst album track that Alt J have ever released. It's such a poorly mixed, poorly written, hobbling mess of a song. And I think they were trying to attempt to sort of exercise some kind of rock and roll swagger on this track. Yeah. But it's clear that this really isn't their strong suit at all.
The problem with this is that they try, like the title suggests, they use snare as a prominent rhythm, but that doesn't work. Unless you're going to have like a really rocking riff that mimics the snares, you need like a kick drum or cymbals to open a song with drums. You can't use a snare. That's used for like rhythmic timing in the middle of other drumming, as I've heard. So unless it's like heavy metal or something, I don't think using a snare to open a song works. But once you get into the song, it's not as if that was like ruining it anyway. I mean,
the snare in this context is just a glorified metronome. Honestly,
you can't use it to open a song, and it sounds like sleazy surf rock instrumentally, and they just sound really confused again.
Yeah, confused is a very good word to describe this track, and indeed a good chunk of this record. And the vocal performance on this track is so bad. The lyrics are just cringeworthy to the extreme. I can't believe they made this song and thought, yep, let's put it on the record. And this brings me to a big criticism I have of Relaxer. It's so short and lacking in content. There's only, 9 songs on here, right?
I think there's 8.
Even worse, there's only 8. And the fact that they did their recording and went, okay, there's 8 songs on this album, which ones do we pick out? I can't imagine what was left on the cutting room floor if they thought putting Hit Me Like That Snare on this album was a good idea.
It's pretty baffling indeed. If
it were a B-side, I'd excuse it. I'd be like, okay, it was just them messing around and it didn't exactly work out, so they didn't put it on a record. But no, it's an album track. And I'm just utterly baffled as to why they thought putting this song on here was a good idea.
I had no idea which songs were singles or not, and for some reason I thought that this and In Cold Blood were the 2 singles.
Really?
I don't know why. I hadn't looked it up. I was thinking, this wasn't a good choice, but I guess it isn't one, so I can't really say that. But it wouldn't be a good choice. And you know that ending lines, which are, fuck you, I'll do what I want to do. It sounds like the band motto to complaints that they're bad or dodgy making songs like this. But yeah, not good. Even I, who can defend a decent chunk of some of this album, I'm certainly not going to listen to that again.
Really bad song. The 3 singles were 3WW, In Cold Blood, and Adeline.
No, I think
What did you think
Adeline
of
was a good
Adeline?
choice. Yeah, I think that was a good choice. I really like that song.
Me
It's a
too.
very romantic and pleasant song once again, and I'm in familiar territory with Free WW sounding a bit like this, and just the whole "Ooh, my Adeline." It's very
It's a
pretty and
nice.
nice.
It's a nice, slow, epic song. For weirdly, my initial reaction to it was this sounds like the sort of thing that you'd hear in a Game of Thrones trailer. I don't know if I
Right.
necessarily still agree with that initial reaction,
I
but I
don't
just
know.
thought it'd be worth mentioning. I mean, you hear stuff like Chelsea Wolfe in Game of Thrones trailers, so I suppose anything's possible. But it does have a very
Yeah.
epic vibe to it, and it manages to bring that atmosphere without much instrumentation. Um, but it's a
Now
cool
there's one,
track.
yeah, there's one weird thing I've noticed with this album. So they go through a whole full blown cover on House of the Rising Sun, which we may talk about a bit more later. But they
Hmm.
also, that's like a standard, but they also use like elements from standards pretty often throughout this album. Like at the end of Adeline, they're quoting the old triangle, which is an old sea shanty, and at the end of Pleader, they have like How Green Was My Valley at the end. Are they so lacking in like content they have to steal from public domain standards? That's what
Yeah,
it sounds like.
I
But
actually
yeah,
liked the sort of reappropriation of My Old Triangle because it felt
yeah,
like a tongue-in-cheek reference to some lyrics from An Awesome Wave to me. All the
yeah,
mentions of triangles. I mean, of course, Alt J. If you type that out on a computer, it comes with a triangle, and there are a bunch of the thing about Alt J, especially on An Awesome Wave, is the lyrics don't really mean anything. They're just a bunch of words strewn
mm,
together. I've heard people interpret Breeze Blocks as a song about molestation, which I'm not
right,
entirely sure if that's what it's really about, if it's about anything, but that's really this level of vagueness is what you're getting with Alt J. But at least by using this triangle reference, they're creating something of a through line in their music. Because got some mentions on This Is All Yours as well, along with other themes that continue on here.
yeah. I'm not saying it in like it's a negative thing. I mean, aside from the whole House of the Rising Sun cover, they're used pretty positively. It's just like it's a bit odd to me because it does suggest that they didn't have that much content to lie back on it as a weird recurring theme.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, we can talk about the House of the Rising Sun cover if you want to. I mean, they
I have.
definitely make it their own, but it's
Yeah,
not in a good
yeah.
way.
I think it's okay.
It is okay, but
It's
it's not.
okay. It sounds
Yeah,
fine. It's just sort of very lazy because, like you said, they seem to be so lacking in ideas and content that they're just straight up doing covers. Again, like I said with "Hit Me Like That Snare," if this House of the Rising Sun cover was a B-side, it would make total sense. But it just ends up on the record. And I had a theory that the title Relaxer is sort of reflective of the state of mind that they went into recording this with. Like they wanted to
yeah.
be really relaxed. They didn't want to box themselves in any way. I think this album really could have benefited from them restricting themselves more because the result is just a confused mess. Um,
Yeah.
we've already talked about all the songs I like on this album. It's all negative from here.
Yeah, well, personally, I found House of the Rising Sun. I mean, the Animals version is not the original. It is a cover of the standard as it was then, but that is basically the definitive version most people see, and I
Yeah, of
feel like
course.
the excitement from that, a great rock cover, it's just so exciting and I don't know, transcendental. It's like cathartic almost, the riffs. And this just feels hazy and confused. I say confused a lot,
It's
but that's how I feel
sleepy.
like the band are. Yeah, it's sleepy and it actually sounds very pleasant, but and there's like contained warmness to the synths.
Yeah,
It's not
I
too
don't think it's
bad.
bad at all. Like I said, the sound
No.
of this track is okay, but it just feels like what was the point of doing this? Like, did they honestly not have
Yeah.
enough material to put in and make the whole album their own? because it's just a little bit weird, especially as like being this early on in the track list. And I mentioned it being sleepy. I think there are a bunch of tracks here that are just a little sleepy or feel quite empty. I mean, you said before you think this is quite messy production-wise. I think there's a lot of tracks on here that really don't have enough instrumentation, if anything. They're far too minimal for their own good. I think the minimalism of 3WW works really well, but on tracks like Last Year and Pleader, it's just kind of... It feels like there's something missing. Whether it's lacking ideas in songwriting, poor structures that are really unmemorable lyrics, really unmemorable performances, not enough content even in the individual songs that we are given here. It's just such a lacking album. It feels like there's almost nothing there at times.
Yeah, I actually agree with you that this sounds a bit like college rock, like college type thing with the track Last Year. Like the lyrics on that are a complete like romanticizing in a very not juvenile way, but like a very disillusioned way. Like he talks about, I don't know, I'm like quoting the lyrics exactly, and he's like talking about things he did like in October when he swam back on his birthday, or tried to learn to count to 10 in Japanese, or this summer you sang at my funeral. Like that is extremely like I don't know, emo type lyrics, but I don't know. But then when he says this summer you sang at my funeral, they actually get a female singer. Like the music stops, and then they get a female singer, Marika Hackman apparently, who's actually made quite a name for herself on the scene of indie folk. She's pretty good herself, but it just seems like there's a lot of tragic melodrama attempted here, and it's too tepid and like coffee shop to have any of that. So yeah, that song's the most confusing to me. I don't even hate it, I'm just like baffled by aspects of it in a way.
Yeah, it's hard to really see what they were even going for here. Like I said, I think they really went into this record with the whole idea of, right, we don't want to repeat ourselves again, we're going to do something completely different.
Yeah.
We're going to retain some elements of what made our band what it is. I mean, you could hear this and you'd still go, yeah, that's an Alt-J record. If only for the vocals, how the vocals sound. But the lack of restriction really results in just this confusing, bustling mess. I mean, and it's really short as well, as we mentioned. I suppose in favour of the record, at least it wasn't another hour and 30 minutes plus slog, but if that's something I'm saying in favour of an album, then the album can't be doing that much good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to quickly touch on Dead Crush, because again, it's not terrible, but the like weird sampled backing vocalist parts add a weird satisfying catchiness to Proceedings. It's too patchy and a bit too odd, and the production still isn't great, but I felt like that was actually the closest to Alt-J of an awesome wave. Like, yeah, maybe some of our songs had more appealing aspects of their older sound, but that sounded the most like an awesome wave track to me. I don't know what you thought of that, but you have to get over there's like a weird falsetto chorus though that you have to get over, I'd say, though. Like his voice is in a falsetto there.
Yeah, my problems with that track line, the vocals, I actually thought the instrumental was quite good on Dead Crush. Certainly breaks the album out of the sleepy haze that it was in, and breaks it out of whatever they were going for on Hit Me Like That Snare that just completely backfired. So it's a really spotty album. It's listenable. It's fine. It's just sort of there. It just sort of starts and ends. It doesn't offend me on any level. I don't... For all my comments about it coming off as kind of pretentious, it's not the kind of pretense that just makes me angry because someone thinks they're right about something. It's more of a like, they went into this having no idea what the hell they were doing. I mean, I could be completely wrong. They could have had a very clear idea of this is what they wanted to do, and they came out with exactly what they wanted to make. Just to me, that's how it comes across. I'm not a fan of this album at all. Yeah,
well, I thought there was enough okay elements for me to see it in a vaguely positive light. But yeah, I think we should go into our overall ratings of it now. There's not much else to talk about.
Yeah, sure thing.
Okay, so I'm going to give it a 5.5 out of 10, which isn't that good of a score, but you know, I found enough good elements in it. Despite that score, there's a lot of nice playing and a few good ideas on here. Very few, but they do enough to make me enjoy what I'm listening to. Although this is like disappointingly flawed and broken sounding, and only Hit Me Like That snare is outright bad. If the whole album was like that, I think a 2 or 3 out of 10 if we're lucky. But yeah, 5.5. It's got some good elements, some good tracks. Yeah.
Well, I would give this album a 4 out of 10. Overall, it's just a fairly uninteresting album, which is really sad to say given how clear it is that Alt J were trying to branch out on this record. Like you said, the only genuinely bad song is Hit Me Like That Snare. But despite that, it all strikes me as being a little too try-hard. Like, they really didn't restrict themselves enough to come through with a properly cohesive project. And I think that's probably a result of them being a bit pigeonholed after the hype surrounding their sophomore album and the subsequent reaction to that album's release. But still, that doesn't make Relaxer any less disappointing to me, especially when they came out with 3WW and In Cold Blood, and I ended up liking those tracks. I don't know if they tried too hard or didn't try enough, but the result just makes for an unmemorable and ultimately mediocre listening experiences for me.
That's the problem. Unless an album gets like truly savaged or massacred by the press and becomes like a joke in the years after, like Saint Anger, we'll never know like the thought process behind making it, because the music press will ask inoffensive questions about albums like this for a while. They won't ask like, what were you thinking? They'll act as if it's just a normal album. So I guess we'll never know. We don't know. We can't go into their minds. But yeah, it would be good to know the premise behind this.
I don't know if this album has been getting... I don't know if this album has been getting bad reviews or good reviews. I've honestly not really been paying attention. But on a personal level, I think this is a weak effort, and if I could speak to Alt J face to face, I'd say, guys, what were you doing here? Because the whole thing, to sum it up in one sentence, it's like the empty promise of something good than something that's actually good.
An empty
I guess
shell.
That's all I have to say about this.
Okay, well, thanks for listening, everybody, to Busted Speakers. I've been Alex, he's been Ed, I hope.
Yeah.
And check us out on social media. I still can't get this order right. Kush had it perfect, and I still can't get it quite right. Subscribe, leave us a comment if you enjoyed or hated this album. Give us your opinion on it. Give us some requests. We'll try and get to them.
Don't forget to mention Singles Club.
Oh, well, yes, you can check out Singles Club, which is a show we both do covering just singles. Yes, I'll have a link to that here as well. Yeah, bye guys.
See ya.